So I tried to do something good for my family, and I ended up sabotaging myself because I tried to do something good for my family. We have these wonderful goats, and we have rabbits and chinchillas, and even a Patagonian cavy, along with all the other animals, emus and dogs and exotic parrots and stuff. But the goats and the rabbits and the chinchillas, they all eat hay, and hay is a naturally occurring ingredient, you know. And it ends up on the floor of the goat barn. If you've ever kept goats, you know that they're quite messy eaters, and they pull hay onto the floor, onto the ground of their barn. Well, I've scooped it all up, cleaned it all up out of their stall, and let it compost a while, and I used it in my vegetable garden, as any good organic vegetable gardener would do. See, we have these wonderful, lovely, beautiful chinchillas here, and underneath their cage, way down here, you can see all this hay. And they spill their feed, and I scoop it up, and I allow it to compost, and I tried to use it in my tomato garden. Now, you might remember watching the video I put last week. Well, probably you didn't. It didn't do very well for my channel. Only about 80 people have watched it. That's okay. But I talked about building this garden bed out of the metal and filling it full of logs. And then on top of that, I put about a foot of that composted, semi-composted hay that I scooped up from the goat barn and under the chinchillas and from the rabbit and Patagonian cavy pen. And I filled it up. It was almost all the way to the top. And then I topped it off with this bagged soil that I got from Home Depot. I got it home, I opened it up, and it was just bark. I looked at the ingredients, and it said sand and ground forestry product. And so it was just sand and ground up bark. Well, I put about 6 inches of that on top of the hay, and it filled this garden bed up, overflowing. Well, it has settled, as I knew that it would. That's why I put more than I needed in there. Once it settled down, I planted these tomatoes. These little ones in front, these are a tumbling Tom tomato. They're a miniature. They're not just a determinate, they are a dwarf miniature type of tomato. They're supposed to be an 18-inch mound, and they're not. These in the back are supposed to be 3 or 4, maybe even 5 feet tall by now. They're not even big enough for me to need to stake yet. Those are just a standard Roma sauce type canning tomatoes. And I put in a couple of pepper plants and even some eggplants. And the kids wanted this yellow. Here, I got a visitor. Hey, darling, you go ahead and eat that, okay? The kids put in this yellow sweet potato because it's pretty, and it is pretty. And it's really the only thing that is growing well. How you doing today, sweetie, huh? This is the baby goat we got from Rose. Have I ever introduced you to her? Huh? Her name is Patience. She's not very patient. That's why I named her Patience. She is Parsley's daughter. Parsley was the goat we got from Rose that lived here for a while, that now lives with Rose again. But we love Patience. We love Parsley. Anyhow, we're talking about vegetables. My tomatoes are just pathetic. My eggplants are pathetic. Most of my peppers have just absolutely died. The only thing doing well is this sweet potato. It's an ornamental sweet potato. It's not something, there you go. You go ahead and eat that, baby. Eat it all up. It's not something that produces any kind of edible potatoes, really. If it does produce any kind of potato, it is edible, but it's not for that purpose. The leaves are edible even for people. You can stew them down like you would collard greens or turnip greens. Use them in stir fries. But I see something. Let's go over here. Do you see this eggplant? How horrible and withered the top of the leaves are. Now, it's still produced an eggplant, and I'm going to pick that in a few days along with this other, and we're going to make some kind of eggplant parmesan something or other. But look here, this pathetic, pitiful little tomato plant has a hornworm on it. There's just no way that little thing's ever going to survive, is it? Well, I was talking about the tomato plant, but the hornworm's not going to survive either. Oh, don't do that. They always scare me when they turn around like that. I'm not scared of snakes, but hey, there's Justice way back there. Hey, Justice. Let me sit back down. It's too hot already for me to be outside. I watched the Roots and Refuge video that Jess posted yesterday. She said it was her one and only rant. No, I'm not like that. I rant a lot. I have an opinion about almost everything. But she talked about how she bought this compost and how it was contaminated with Grazon. Grazon is an herbicide that is sprayed on hay fields to kill broadleaf, especially woody, shrubby plants. It's to kill any broadleaf plants that might grow up, like goldenrods or plantain or dock, but especially shrubby, viney things like blackberries and kudzu and honeysuckle and privet hedge, things that would easily contaminate a hayfield. And it's intended to increase the hay production for horses and cattle and other livestock. Well, the problem is that it passes through the digestive system of the animal. No telling what it does to the insides of that poor animal, but it passes through the digestive system and remains active in the manure even once it's composted. And even worse is the hay that is wasted on the floor of the barn. If you scoop that up, rake it up, shovel it up, scoop it up, and try to compost that Grazon, that herbicide, remains active in your compost, in the soil, for 4 and 5 years. Danny and Miss Wanda at Deep South Homestead, they have experienced this also. They have videos from a couple years ago talking about the bad experience they have had. And I spoke with Rose at Wholesome Roots Farm last night, and she said that she's even had the issue at her house with her gardens. Not her current house, not her current garden. Ryan works for an actual composting company where they go around to kitchens and restaurants and gather up food scraps and compost. And so she has compost from that and is doing famously with her garden. It's just fabulous. But at her old place, it was an old horse barn, and they had cleaned out the horse barn and used all that hay in their garden, all that compost, and she had issues with that. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm really bummed out about this. First of all, the soil that I bought was not soil. I wasted money buying, bark mulch, basically. I can amend that and make that better, but I have this layer, this 6-inch layer of contaminated compost underneath that, and really the only thing that's going to be good for is to grow corn. Well, I don't want to grow corn. Corn's not something that I've ever really wanted to grow, and the only reason that corn would survive is because it is a grass. Grazon is intended to be sprayed on grass. I guess I could grow wheat or oats or bamboo, but it's a 2-foot tall raised bed that I've intended to grow, kitchen vegetables in, not corn. I guess that's really all that I have left to do, though. I'm just really bummed out about this. If you buy wheat straw to use as bedding or as mulch, wheat straw is the stems left over from wheat once the grain has been gathered off of that. but it has been soaked in Roundup. Um, they spray the wheat crop, the grain crops, with an herbicide to kill. Well, they spray it with something like Grazon, maybe not that particular name brand, but they would spray it with something during the growing cycle to kill broadleaf weeds, broadleaf plants. But then when it comes time to harvest, they use just regular Roundup to spray on it to kill the actual wheat plant. And they call that dry off, so that the plant dries up and the seed heads dry up, and it's more easy to harvest all at once. And so wheat straw is not an option to use in a garden either. So basically you're left with wood chips or sawdust or pine straw as, a readily available, easily sourced mulch, bedding, what have you. I'm just really bummed out about it. I wouldn't use the word devastated, but it's depressing. It's upsetting. I'm trying to grow something for my family to eat, something that we need, and I've unknowingly, unwittingly sabotaged myself trying to be an organic farmer and using compost that I have made, and now it's not usable, and it's really upsetting. But anyhow, I want to thank Rose at Wholesome Roots, and Jess at Roots and Refuge, and Mr. Danny at Deep South Homestead. Really been helpful watching your videos. I'll put links of all those down in the description. I can't dig all this out and start over. I just don't have it in me. I don't have anything to start over with. I have seeds, that's not an issue. I just don't have the resources to refill this garden bed. I don't know what to do. I probably will put some corn seeds in here. Rose, I thought about beans, but Rose said that beans would do even worse than what these crops here. The eggplants, tomatoes, and peppers, they're all the solanums, the nightshade family, and they're just really, really susceptible to this Grazon poison that is being sprayed